The Canadian Museum for Human Rights found that between 2009 and 2021, Indigenous women and girls were 2 and 3% of the population of Canada. However, they represented 5% and 7% of homicide victims. Through police inaction and media bias, Indigenous women and girls go underrepresented in the media when they encounter violence. CBC News states that many cases involving missing Indigenous women involve suspicious circumstances. However, the police continually rule out foul play. Martin Meadow, Flores, and Alfaro in 2023 all respectively found that stereotyping is one way that police use to dismiss violence committed against Indigenous women. Stereotyping Indigenous women as drunks allows police to write off any odd behavior and evidence of violence as drunken stumbles and falls, saying the drinks killed them and not the violence that caused the death. Framing the missing people as drunk justifies the murder. The police want to frame their disappearance as consequences of their choices. They often dismiss missing Indigenous women as runaways, or their disappearance is described as inevitable by police. Police inaction was another major style of dismissing violence against Indigenous women and girls. Not investigating public records, not taking reports of violence, and not filing missing person reports, ignoring information, and basically doing absolutely nothing. They also fail to disclose information to families when it comes up, not telling them that their loved one has died or how they died, not informing families that the missing persons case is closed or open. Blame from the police was often put on poverty or mental health issues and the choices of Indigenous women and girls instead of taking appropriate action, because it's easier to blame the victim than look for them or admit that there's a systemic issue. Police define missing women more often as runaways, suggesting the missing women and girls choose to leave their communities and cut contact, saying the missing women and girls are out partying or don't want to be found, dismissing the concerns from their friends and family. Because of the dismissal, the police do not act with urgency in searching for women and girls. By doing this, they deny Indigenous peoples justice and recognition. Due to the confining of information, this often leaves families without closure, and the cases of missing women and girls often go unsolved, no answers, no bodies, no truths. Police's lack of urgency and effort in searching for Indigenous women is a continuation of colonization, going back to settler strategies in 1876, which restricted women's abilities to pass status to their children, along with forced sterilization. If Indigenous women are not around, the continuation of Indigenous culture is restricted. RCMP states that they take a victim-centered approach to missing persons cases, adopting empathy and a supportive culture. However, the evidence shows that they continue to have systemic issues while handling the cases of Indigenous women and girls. What does the media coverage of Indigenous women and girls look like? Well, Alicia Colbert from Queen's University found that before the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, there was a significant difference in media coverage of missing peoples who were Indigenous versus non-Indigenous. This was through the tone of reports, the context of reports, and whether it was even covered in the media. Articles about missing Indigenous women were often shorter in comparison to non-Indigenous women, with little attention being paid to the missing person's character or family, their ambitions in life, with more information being paid to stereotypes. Analysis of the placement of missing persons articles and papers showed that missing white women appeared on the front page of the paper 37% of the time, while Indigenous women were on the front 25% of the time, often placing Indigenous people's articles on the periphery of newspapers, signaling their unimportance or the lack of urgency in the case. They also found that high-risk Indigenous women received more media coverage than non-high-risk Indigenous women, though media coverage was still slim to none. What the news reports on and for how long determines how important people think what they cover is. This way, the news acts as a gatekeeper to what people know and deem important. Through this, they can influence how the public feels about certain cases by portraying them in a specific way and framing stories, etc. Shah in 2021, along with Gilchrist in 2010, found that missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls not only face racism in the media, but they also face misogyny, reducing perceived violence against them and facing erasure of them. For example, Highway 16, a highway famous for harboring violence against Indigenous women, only got media and police attention after a white middle-class young woman went missing. Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls are often not shown in the media because their stories are not seen as newsworthy. Because not all crimes are newsworthy, domestic violence and violence committed in a home that are non-fatal tend to not make news or fall at the bottom of news articles, as well as not all female victims are treated equally in the media. With this, women are also categorized as good or bad and worthy or unworthy of news, with Indigenous women often being seen as bad and unnewsworthy due to their life circumstances and stereotyping. Those viewed as good were often middle-class, white, able-bodied women, as they represented the ideal of innocence. Due to their femininity and perceived innocence, violence committed against them is more important and newsworthy. By not reporting on Indigenous women, the same as non-Indigenous peoples, we are furthering the settler colonial framework, deeming non-Indigenous people as subordinate to the white class others. Often, Indigenous women are labeled as high risk. High risk is a label that implies someone encountered violence because of their choices. This means the media views Indigenous women who are doing what they have to survive as unworthy of having their murders reported on because of their high risk. Because of this structure, this signals to the public that their lives do not matter and the violence committed against them was their fault because of their choices. When Indigenous women made it into the news, they often lacked information about the victims as a person and information about their community, generating less sympathy and a feeling of connection to the person. Photos would be sized as small as passport photos, with few photos of the victim with their family and loved ones, denying consumers the opportunity to identify with them. In advertisements, Indigenous women would occupy smaller areas than department store credit card advertisements. Due to these poorly placed stories in the media, their cases are often viewed with less urgency and importance. Refusing to report on Indigenous women and girls not only dehumanizes them, but also enforces the idea that no one cares about them, when the truth is there is a family and community doing their best to advocate and locate their missing loved one. The media uses this type of coverage of Indigenous peoples as another way of othering them and denying them respect. Calls to action number 6 from the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry on CBC News states that there is to be, quote, authentic and appropriate representation of Indigenous women and 2S LGBTQIA people, end quote, in the media. However, there continues to be misrepresentation of Indigenous women and girls in the media, lack of attention to the stories, and dismissal of violence by those in charge of keeping them safe. Shah in 2021 found that there has been a rise in the use of social media to spread awareness about missing Indigenous peoples. This is due to the ability for anyone and everyone to post, allowing for ongoing activism and awareness around the issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and those who are missing. Because of the media and police have failed them, social media allows the community to take action and tell their stories without the complications of stereotypes and twisting of stories. This allows Indigenous peoples a platform to say and report on everything they deem important and newsworthy. The lack of media coverage in the treatment of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is directly linked to systemic racism and oppression, with colonial violence as the foundation of Canada. Influencing public narratives of Indigenous peoples, increasing victim blaming, and dismissing the issues that Indigenous peoples are facing. Indigenous women and girls deserve recognition, deserve life, and deserve to be found. Hi, I'm Avery. I'm the student, director, editor, writer, and I'm excited to share my video.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm the actor in this video, and I'm Anishinaabe, and I'm very happy to be in this video and supporting Avery in their school.